it is an honor to be able to speak to you guys, and it's always an honor when Casey asks me to fill his shoes while he's gone. I really enjoy it, but I do have to remind myself of what God says, and He says, do not fear and to have courage, because it takes a lot of courage to do this, because it really is, for me, terrifying. This is what I call my God-sized task. I could not be up here doing this if it was not for God doing it for me. This morning, I always want to talk about something that's just been close to my heart for several months. And it's about us as men. And really, it's about us as fathers. Because I really believe that we are facing an epidemic in America today. And that epidemic is us as fathers not leading our homes and not leading our children to love Christ. I found some really wild and crazy percentages when I was looking over this, studying for this, and of the outcome of what happens to children when they're in a fatherless home. And what I found was that 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 70% of juveniles in state institutions, fatherless homes. 71% of teen pregnancies, fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts, fatherless homes. 75% of children with drug abuse or in drug abuse centers, fatherless homes. 85% of our youth sitting in prison today, fatherless homes. 85% of children with behavioral problems, fatherless homes. And 90% of homeless and runaway children from fatherless homes. That tells me that we have a real problem in America. And see, I'm not talking, if you're sitting here and you're starting to tune me out because you say I'm a father and I've been home and I live with my kids, that's not what I'm talking about. See, you can be a father and you can live at home, or you can live at home, but you could not be a father. See, these percentages are from fatherless homes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are not in the home. They don't have dads around. So you can live at home and say your children are not fatherless, but where are you with your children? Are you so involved in your job or so involved in other things that you're not a part of your children's lives, that you're present, but you're not? See, our children need us to be there for them. And I'm not just saying sitting on the couch watching TV and not being a part of your kids' life. Your kids need you to be active with them. Your families need you to lead them. This is something I hold that's been a learning experience for me. See, I didn't grow up. I grew up in a home where I had a great father. My father led our family very well. My father stood for what he believed in no matter what the circumstance. And I've told my wife before that if I could grow up to be half the man my dad is, I would be somebody. My dad didn't back down from fear. He was a courageous man, still is a courageous man. And I don't want you to think, if you're not a father, this doesn't pertain to you, because it does. Because we have so many children out there right now that do not have a father who is present in their life, that you could step into that role. If you think my kids are already all grown up and they're moved out and we don't have anybody, you're wrong. You see, you have grandchildren. If you have grandchildren, then be a grandpa who's a man for God. So you can invest into your grandchildren's lives too. Once your kids move up and they're gone, that doesn't that doesn't relinquish your role and your responsibility as a father. In Joshua 1:9 it says, "This is my command, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." I'll tell you that being a father in my life has not been easy. It is quite a learning experience on how to raise children. As somebody said, they wish they had a manual for that, but they don't. And it is very difficult to do. But I want to be a man of God, and I want to lead my family. See, many of you know, or if you don't, 3 years ago this last Christmas, we lost a child to SIDS. And I can tell you that I bought into the American dream so much that I can count on one hand how many times I held my baby boy before he was gone. Because I bought into what this world tells me so much that I was so busy trying to work a job and build a business at the same time so that I could give my family everything this world tells me I have to give them, that I didn't give my family what they needed. And I learned real quick how precious my kids' lives are. And I wish that I would have listened to Mama. Because I don't know how many times I would be back in my shop working and she would come back and she would say, "Why don't you come in and spend some time with us? The kids are missing you." And she knew what my response was going to be every time. Let me finish what I'm doing while my mind's on it. And she never gave me any heartache over that. But I wish I would have listened. Because by the time I finished what I wanted to finish, my kids were already in bed. I'd done missed the opportunity to show them I love them. I want to be a father who teaches my kids that the important thing in life is Jesus. The important thing in life is following Him at all cost. And it's hard. It's real hard. Some of the youth here will remember, but a year or two ago, I don't remember which, we were at church camp. And there was a pastor speaking, and he told a story that just radically changed how I looked at how I was raising my kids. I don't remember what country it was in, but it was in a country where you could lose your life for reading God's Word. And there was this group of people that had been meeting in this home for a while, and I don't remember the exact number. I know it was 30-something. And they didn't know that soldiers had been watching them for several months, meeting in this home. And one day while they were meeting, there was a knock at the door. And when they opened the door, there was the soldiers. And they drug him out of the house. And laying out on the ground was a cross for every single person in that home, built specifically to their size. And the soldier walked up to this little boy and he said, "Son, you don't have to die today. I can save you. All you have to do is tell me this ain't real." And what came next changed my life. Because that little boy looked up at that soldier and he said, "Which cross is mine?" And as that soldier pointed across the sea of crosses and said, "That one," to this little cross laying out there for this boy, that boy began to run to his cross. And when he got on it, he fell on his cross and he embraced it. And I started thinking to myself, what did that dad do right that his son would die for Jesus? See, I want someday, if somebody knocks at my door, I want my children to say, which cross is mine? And the only way they're going to do that is if I stand up and I become a man and I do what God has called me to do and I lead my family. Men, how are you treating your wives? Because how you treat your wives will influence your children someday when they have spouses. Are you loving your wives? Are you doing what God says to do? Are you cherishing them? Do you honor them? I learned something even about marriage as I was looking over this week that I never even thought of before. But I think as a man, as a follower of Christ, we really need to really think about this, that marriage is a reflection of God's love for the church. Do your marriages reflect God's love that He has for us as a church? Are you modeling that to your children? Are you spending time teaching your children God's Word and the importance of who Jesus is and what Jesus did for them? Are you teaching them the importance of eternity? Are we too busy trying to build an empire so that one day our kids don't even know the importance of eternity? It's an epidemic, and we're doing nothing to fix it. And today I just want to call you as men, you as fathers, to begin to step up and to begin to take your role seriously and to begin to take the role that God has given you and to lead. See, as a man, God calls you to an appropriate and an excellent standard, and that standard is His. It's not the world's. It's God's standard. And to be a man is to fully own your role as an adult, as a father, as an employee, as a neighbor, and any other role you choose to undertake. Up until the last year, I worked out in the business field, out in the world. And it was hard. For a good part of our first marriage, I just pretty much went with the flow because I was too afraid to be courageous. And as I realized the importance of needing to be courageous in my workplace, yeah, I got made fun of. But then I began to tell myself, if I can do this at my job, why can I not do this with my family? And as I began to try to take on that role and lead my wife and be courageous and to be her leader, I learned a lot. And then we had kids. That pretty much changes everything. And being a father has been very difficult and will always be difficult. But the one thing I want to do is I want my kids to know not only that I love them, but that Jesus loves them and that Jesus gave His life for them. It's not good enough, men, that we just work a job, read our kids a bedtime story. It's not good enough. It's time we take on what God has asked us to do. In Deuteronomy 11, in verse 18 and 19, it says, "So commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these words of mine. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road, when you are going to bed and when you are getting up." Men, are we doing that? Do we have a personal relationship with Christ to the point that we are committed to spending time in His Word? We are committed to being on our knees and praying for our families and leading our families and loving and teaching our children. God says we need to be doing it wholeheartedly. Are we? Because according to these statistics, we're not. This isn't for the lighthearted. This is for men. This is for men who say, "I will follow you, Christ. I will follow you, God, and I will lead my family as you have asked me to do." God gave us 66 books to teach us. Not only to teach us on our own level, but to teach us how to teach our children and to teach us how to lead our families. You can't do it on your own. Only Christ can do it for you. And in Joshua it said, "I command you." He didn't say, "I ask you." I'm asking you as a dad, would you consider leading your families? No, he didn't ask. He commanded you to be strong, to be fearless, to be courageous, and to take on that role that America is telling you you don't have to have it. It's not that important. What's important is you take care of yourself. We've got to quit being so afraid, man. Because it says, God says He will be with you. I'll tell you that sometimes when I'm always the first to defend my kids. It's probably a good thing my wife left now. I usually get in a lot of trouble. When my kids get hurt, I am fearless. And I will do whatever it takes for them. Nehemiah this weekend, last Thursday, I was working on a house. We bought a house and we're remodeling it, and I was working on it, and I get a phone call from Melissa, and I can tell she's panicked on the other end, and she says, "You got to come home now. Nehemiah is hurt, and he's got to go to the hospital." And I will tell you that I was fearless. I didn't care about what the law said. I was in my truck, and I broke every law there was known to get home to my child. And I got him in the van, and I broke every law known to get him to the hospital. I was fearless. And I walked into the hospital room, and my son, his wrist is slit open, and my wife is holding compression on it, and there's nobody at the desk in the emergency room. And I was fearless until my wife said, "Quit being so fearless." But men, that's the kind of courage that we need to have when it comes to the eternity of our children. We need to be fearless. We need to do whatever it takes for our children to know who Christ is and that their eternity can lie with Him. There's, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Courageous or not, but that movie just really spoke to me. And the end of that movie, there's a scene at the end of that movie that pretty much sums everything up when I'm trying to say it in a whole lot better way than I'm trying to say it. And I'm going to show you that clip. And while you're watching that, fathers, I want to challenge you to consider what he's asking. I want to challenge you to quit sitting on the back row and to step up and take leadership of your family. Because it's extremely important. These men have stood in here today and have accepted a challenge. And I ask that you would keep them in your prayers, because it's not an easy challenge. I just want to say that we have the greatest responsibility that anybody could ever have. God has given us as fathers and as men the greatest responsibility on this earth. And by His grace, if we choose to accept it, He will be there for us. He will guide us. He will teach us. He will lead us. In June, we're going to start a study for the men who stood in here, if they are willing to continue. The men who didn't stand, who may change their minds later. And we're going to start a study to help each of us learn and how to better equip us to lead our families. And it won't be for the lighthearted. It'll be for the men who want to be men, who want to be leaders. I would tell you that the first thing to leading your family is having a personal relationship with Christ. For you men that have that personal relationship with Christ, I want to challenge you to accept it, to own it, to begin to live like you have a personal relationship with Christ, to begin to lead your families the way God has asked you to lead your families. As the band comes, for you men that don't have, or anybody that don't have that personal relationship with Christ, I'm going to offer today, I'm going to give you a chance today to start. Because that's where it all starts at, men. It all starts with that relationship with Christ. And if you do not have that relationship with Christ, it's got to start there, because without Him, it's impossible. Without Him, you will never lead your family. You will never teach your family the importance of their eternity. So as we stand, I want to challenge you guys, you men. If you don't know Christ, now's the time. And if you do, I want to challenge you to be on your knees and be asking God, what do I need to change? What do I need to do to begin to lead my family to follow you? As you stand.